This is the last video in a 4-part series on industrial demand management. In the first part of this series, you learned the basic concepts of industrial demand management and how to identify opportunities. In this final video, we discuss the need for a communication and response plan to ensure that the demand management opportunities you've identified are successfully implemented and deliver the expected results. This requires planning to ensure that the people responsible for or affected by demand response strategies understand why they need to make changes, what exactly they need to do, and when they need to do it. For your plan to be successful, you need to consider the following 4 components. First, get buy-in from all key stakeholders. Then, determine the most appropriate way to communicate how and when to reduce demand. Finally, develop a method to communicate the results of demand reduction to reinforce the benefits of the demand management process and ensure a cycle of continuous improvement. The first component of the plan is to get buy-in from those affected by the changes in operations, equipment, or scheduling that will be required to reduce demand. This can include senior management, employees, customers, and anyone else who will be part of the overall process. Stakeholders may have legitimate concerns about the proposed changes, and it's important to listen to them and be prepared to address any issues. Senior management may be concerned about the cost of shutting down production and need to see the financial benefits of the plan. Department managers may be reluctant to make changes that put their priorities at risk and need assurance that critical systems will not be impacted. Employees may not want to change their schedules or may be anxious about being asked to go home for a shift. They need to know why these changes are being made and how the policy benefits them. Buy-in needs to occur up front to ensure that everyone is doing their part to support the demand reduction strategies and that no one is caught off guard or negatively impacted when the changes are rolled out. To achieve buy-in, reach out to employees to explain what's being done and why it's important. Work to reassure people that these changes will not negatively impact their jobs and operations. For senior management, focus on the business case and create models of projected savings to provide financial justification or payback for the initiatives. Most importantly, listen to the concerns raised and involve those affected in developing solutions that consider everyone's needs. Next, you need to plan so that people know exactly how demand will be reduced and what they need to do. You need to determine who will be responsible and what actions they must take to reduce demand when needed. This may require changes to standard operating procedures, shift schedules, or the purchase of new or upgraded equipment. New or updated training should also be considered. The key is to ensure that everyone knows what to do at certain scheduled times or when a peak notification signal is received. Do the right people know which equipment to shut down or which alternative generation sources to use? Have the right people been trained to use the new equipment? Are employees prepared for changes in shift schedules? Is someone responsible for monitoring demand to ensure it's being reduced? Components of the how part of the plan may include updating standard operating procedures and new or enhanced training to cover the operation and maintenance of new equipment, such as battery banks. A process for communicating any schedule changes must be developed so that employees have time to adjust and prepare for the change in work hours. Again, it's critical to listen to and involve those who will be affected by these changes. Seek their input as you develop this part of the communication plan. Next, you need a solid plan to communicate when demand needs to be reduced so that the curtailment actions that need to happen actually happen. This demand reduction communication chain has 4 key links. First, the notice to curtail is generated. This can come from an external third party or from internal staff trained to predict coincident peaks. Your organization will then receive the notice to curtail. In some cases, you may have a control system that automatically receives the signal generated by a third party. In other cases, the signal may be received manually. In each case, it's important to ensure that the signal is not missed if, for example, the manager who normally receives it is away or on vacation. Thirdly, instructions are sent to operators or equipment to implement the curtailment. Again, this could be automated, such as a battery system responding to a curtailment signal, or it could be a manual process. In these situations, it's important to ensure and verify that these notices are sent and that a process is in place to acknowledge receipt of the instructions and to follow up if the required actions are not taken. Finally, it can be helpful to monitor demand in real time to provide immediate feedback on whether curtailment goals are being achieved or whether more needs to be done. This can provide a form of continuous improvement to keep your energy goals on track. Consider options such as implementing a dashboard or installing some visual signal to alert employees to the need to reduce demand. You can also use internal communication tools such as Teams, Slack, or other social media options. Also remember to update internal training so that everyone knows how to respond to the signals. Finally, it's important to include a method of communicating the results of demand management actions back to the organization. This will provide concrete evidence that people's efforts are having an impact. Provide examples of the impact of the demand management action, such as the amount of savings achieved or the benefits to the organization. If the action failed or fell short of expectations, include this so that action can be taken to avoid repetition. Make sure that this communication is a two-way process. Allow employees to provide feedback and suggest ways to improve the overall process. Finally, remember that demand management planning should be an ongoing process, with a focus on continuous improvement to achieve success.